The Magic Thief, Chapter 31. Blending with the night, I slunk through the alleys until I arrived at Dusk House. Even though it was the middle of the night, the barred windows were bright with lights. The air felt like it was full of invisible needles. It pulsed and hummed and made my fur stand up on end. Something was going on in there, sure as sure. I padded up to the gate and slid through the bars, then went down the edge of the gravel driveway and around the back of the mansion, where I found a cluster of sheds and a small, dirty courtyard. A door opened and closed, and I heard footsteps crunching across the frozen snow. Another door creaked. Somebody visiting a privy, I guessed. I slunk closer. When the person, a minion with a knife at his belt, crunched toward the back door again, I followed him inside. He didn't notice me. I headed down the dark corridors, slinking through open doors, glad for my black fur, which kept me hidden in the shadows, until I came to the room with the bookcase and the stairway, the room where I'd seen Pettibox when I'd spied during Nevery's visit. The room was empty, the bookcase propped open. Behind it loomed the dark doorway. I padded across the room to the top of the narrow, dark stairs. I paused at the opening. My whiskers twitched. I smelled something bad, something wrong. If I really were a cat, I might have known what it was, but all I knew was that the smell made my tail bristle and put my ears back. But I had to get down the stairs. I crouched on the edge of the step, my tail twitching, and peeked over. Nothing but darkness. I hopped down 3 steps and paused. From below, I heard clanking and the scrape of gears. Men shouted. The air pulsed. Then came a roar, like wind and thunder in the middle of a storm, and then a crack, like lightning striking. My paws trembled against the stone steps. What were they doing down there? I had to go on to find out. I jumped down a few more steps and peered into the darkness below. 2 red points of light, low to the ground, looked back at me. All my fur stood on end. I went down another step. From out of the gloom, dragging itself up the stairs, came an enormous rat, bigger than I was, with a scaly, naked tail, ragged gray fur, and sharp teeth. The rat lowered its head and hissed. Its red eyes gleamed. It was a minion, I realized, one of the Underlord's men who had attacked Bennett and me in the alley. Did it know who I was? That I had changed it from a man into a rat? The rat climbed up another step until it was just below me. Then, in a whirl of snarl and lashing tail, it leaped. As it came at me, its teeth bared, I rolled onto my back and raised my 4 clawed paws. We tangled together, slashed, gnashing, and bumped down 2 steps. I swiped a paw across its snout, and it lunged at me, hissing. I darted out of its way, landing on 4 paws, crouched, growling, my tail whipping back and forth. It came at me again, slashing at my side with its sharp teeth, but I ducked past it and sank my own teeth deep into its tail. It tasted terrible. The rat whirled to rake me with its claws. I spat out its tail, leapt onto its back, and swiped my claws across its red eyes. Then I sprang off. Squealing, shaking its head, the rat backed away, blinded. Watching it carefully, I eased away. It crouched on the step, pawing at its eyes, hissing. Quietly, I hopped down a step, then another. My fur settled, and I went on down the steps to the first turning. I looked back, but the rat had not followed. I slunk around the corner, then down to the second turning in the stairway. The sound of clanking and gears had gotten louder, almost deafening. I sat on the step and peered around the corner. Like when I'd been here before, I saw a huge, bright space, men, glinting metal gears. I pulled my head back and blinked, then looked again, more carefully. The workroom, which was huge and cavernous, had been dug out of the rock. It was lit with flickering whirlights set along the rock walls and hanging from the ceiling. I saw men hunched over papers, diagrams or plans at a long table, and other men wrestling with a fat, pulsing hose. Along the edge of the room were more tables covered with glass jars and vials and copper odds and ends, tubes and wires and boxes of screws. And in the middle of the workroom, taking up most of the space, looming up to the ceiling, squatted a huge, sprawling, gleaming, geared device. Its middle was a huge tank, stitched across with rivets and bristling with tubes and dials. On one side, it had a series of gears, gnashing together. On the other were copper coils, swollen hoses, and crystal tubes dripping with slow silver. The device pulsed and heaved. As I watched, a long piston near the floor groaned forward, and an immense gear turned. The men shouted, steam hissed out in smoky clouds, and there came a rushing of wind, of something being sucked in toward the device. A vent in the side gaped. Gears shrieked, thunder crashed, and the lights went out. And deep inside, I felt a sudden, empty, lonely ache. The lights flickered on. A few men went to the machine to check the dials. Other men went back to looking at the diagrams. The air settled, and the machine hummed. I backed away from the turning and went up a few steps. Then I crouched down, shivering. In the darkness on the step, I realized what they were doing. They were sucking in all of Wellmet's magic and storing it. The device was a capacitor, like the melted machine I'd found in Heart's Ease, but huge, a prison for the magic. What would they do with the magic once they had it all? Would they kill it? I licked my paw and washed it across my face and whiskers. Enough worrying. I had the proof I needed. Now I had to get out, change myself back into a boy, and tell somebody what was going on. It wasn't too late. I raced up the stairs, past the place where I'd fought the rat. After reaching the top of the stairs, I got halfway across the room before I realized that I was surrounded. The rat, its snout bloody and its teeth bared, was waiting for me, and it had brought help. 2 more rats. 3 against 1, not a fight I could win. I didn't pause, just leapt for the door. Squealing, the rat scrabbled and leapt after me. I pelted down a hallway, skidding around a corner, and found myself faced with 3 closed doors, a dead end. The rats swirled round the corner and stopped. Snarling, they paced closer, lashing their tails. One of the rats bared its fangs, then leapt forward. At the same time, the other rat swarmed over me, biting. I bit back and clawed and squirmed away as teeth slashed my foreleg. I rolled onto my paws and darted away. I raced down the corridors and around corners, the rats right behind me, until I got to the main entryway. My paws skidded on the slick stone floor as I raced for the front door. A minion was coming in, just closing the door. He stared as I raced toward him and darted between his legs and outside, into the cold, dark night. Behind me, the door slammed, closing the rats inside. I tumbled to the bottom of the front steps and crouched on the freezing ground, shivering, trying to catch my breath. The slash on my front leg burned, and I had rat bites on my back and sides. Limping, I crept away into the night. Nevery's Journal. Stayed up late monitoring magical level with Gage. Several times, level fell abruptly. Alarmed. Almost no magic left in city. Went to study to check notes. Read until early morning, no new conclusions. Tired. Bennett came up with tea. Con isn't back yet, sir, Bennett said. Told him cursed boy isn't coming back at all. Bennett asked why. Told him boy is spy for Underlord. No, he isn't, master, Bennett said. Told him I had proof. Boy and Underlord shared a family name. Bennett looked interested. Do they? Then he shrugged. Still, Con's not a spy for Crow. How do you know? I asked. He wouldn't, Bennett said. He stood in doorway with arms folded, seemed very certain. Sir, when we were attacked in the twilight, it was Crow's men. They were after Con. Why would Crow send men to attack his own spy? Not sure what to think.